Join us on the Path Radio Mix online. And to get there, type in thepathradio.com. That's thepathradio.com. And enjoy free streaming music all day long. That's it. thepathradio.com. All right, now let's get to the main show, the Monthly Social Podcast, with me, your host, Guido Perino, as you go on with Guido. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April Go On with Guido podcast. As usual, jam-packed show. We got special guest, Canadian Sarah Tolle, with a couple of songs for you, Fight For You and Like It or Not, as well as a really cool interview. We're going to look at what Poli-Medical means. I'm going to take you back to the future, back to May 1919. Wait for that. Also, what's the weather going to be like this summer? How does sun affect our skin? Notes from the almanac. We interview a couple of students on the effects of COVID-19. We talk about gas prices and how they're escalating with some folks out on the street in a special report. Then we got the Four Fans Talk Sports with some special segments. Tune into that and let's go! Johnny Prosciutto, artisanal Italian homemade products. We make it like our grandfather, or as we say, Nonno. Naturally cured, old-fashioned, and delicious. The best part? We deliver straight to your front door. We offer free shipping when spending over $99. Order online at johnnyprosciutto.com and stay safe. And when you use the code GOGUIDO, you're going to save $10 off your entire order. That's the code GOGUIDO on johnnyprosciutto.com. I would like to welcome to the show from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, singer-songwriter, actor, and screenwriter, Sarah Tolle. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah, welcome to the show. And I want to say thanks for joining me today. I know we kind of did a little preamble there before we hit record here, but I got to tell you, I had an interview a few days ago with somebody out on Vancouver Island, and they were telling me how much they were loving the weather. But how are things going for you today, weather or otherwise? You know?
Well, Vancouver Island gets a warmer weather, I believe, than Vancouver, or so it would seem, because it's been really, really chilly the past couple of days. I can't complain. I've realized that this is one of the warmest places in Canada. So, you know what? It's great.
So, when you say chilly today? How chilly? What was it?
I think it was freezing. It was like minus a degree or two. You know.
Okay. All right.
I run cold.
No, it's okay. No judgment whatsoever. Here it was like minus 20 a few weeks ago, and I'm actually from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which is 8 hours north of here.
Okay.
Legally, it takes 8 hours to drive there legally.
Ooh.
But there, we used to get stretches of 3-4 weeks at minus 20, minus 25, cold, just bitter cold. So I would take -1. I said I wanted to go somewhere here in Southern Ontario where it didn't snow as much, and I'm in a snow belt here in Richmond Hill. So
excellent.
It is what it is. But hey, speaking of weather, I introduced you as from Vancouver because that's where you are, of course, but you're originally from Wisconsin. And I'm going to blame it on that 70s show. I want to say Green Bay or I don't know why I have that in my head, Green Bay. But where is it, Green Bay? And what brought you to Vancouver, Canada?
It's not Green Bay. It must be that 70s show. Everybody thinks, fun fact is I just saw that 70s show for the first time maybe last month. And my whole life, people have always been saying, Wisconsin, that 70s show. And I've never seen it. Now I know what they're saying. But yeah, I'm from a real small farm town called Kansasville, which is in southeastern Wisconsin. So that's pretty close to like the bottom edge of Lake Michigan and a couple hours away from Chicago.
Oh,
so yeah, farmy and I guess used to be in a manufacturing and industrial area, but not so much of that anymore, right? But yeah, that's where I'm originally from. And I moved out to Vancouver 6 years ago. And put down more roots than I intended. So here I am.
I'm okay. I'm happy to have you in Canada. That's great. I want to say, like, I had a role in this at all. I didn't, but I feel like, we've usurped a talent into our country. So
that's right.
So before we get into your music, I understand that you are an actress. Maybe you could clear this up for me, because sometimes I want to say actress and sometimes I want to say actor.
I switch off. Oh. I think some people care, but I don't care. So I always forget, and I just say whatever comes out.
Okay, so I'm not breaking any rule. If I say actress or actor, I'm not breaking any rule. I'm not upsetting the balance of whatever.
I don't know. I'm sure there's balance. I'm a little outside of. I kind of have one foot outside the world. Sometimes it feels like I don't really know what's going on. So I don't know what's the right term to use.
Okay, so as long as I'm not offending you, that we're going with that. So I was gonna say, you're an actress too. You've been in some shorts, which not shorts as in pants shorts, some short films.
That too.
Yeah, right. I mean, 1 Degrees. When My Demon Speaks, Filmstro, I think Good Deed, and most recently Used. But you also write screenplays. And it seems that I was first introduced to you through your music, but it seems that as an artist, you're evolved across multiple disciplines. I'm just curious, how does the acting part fit with the music or influence it?
Yeah, it fits great. I tend to, you know how it is too. I'm not that accomplished or far along in any of my art careers. Like, I've always liked art, but I've never really considered myself a full-time professional or artist, until, I don't know, maybe last year or the year before or something. And so it really helps to have multiple things going on, because when something kind of peters out, whatever, you have something else, like acting for me for a while. I was cast in a role, a really good one in comedy, and then the show was greenlit and then pulled off when COVID hit. So we didn't get to film it. And that was, kind of sad, but at the same time I had music, right? So that I could just invest in my music, and you can just pick things up when it's the right time, instead of feeling this just like sad slumpiness that it's not moving forward. So I like that. And actually a lot of the techniques from my experience and my training with acting have been really good for singing, because of getting like that. I don't know, as a singer, you growing up, if you join choir and stuff, you learn how to have good posture and like lift your eyebrows or like open your throat and stuff like that. I don't even know the techniques, but anyways, you don't really learn how to like tune in emotionally and get into that space. But in acting, it's all about that. So I just use those techniques from acting when I go into record to get into the right emotional space, to get that sound and the good energy into the recording.
Yeah, to kind of get into that pocket, if you will, right? Where you're connecting with it. And I guess maybe the other way around. Has your music worked into some of the roles in acting?
Oh, I wonder. I don't think so. Not yet, but maybe I'll get cast. Someone told me, actually, many people on social media have told me, probably because I play the banjo, that I look like the boy from Deliverance, which is wild because he's like an 8-year-old boy. Anyways, yeah. So
I'm gonna have to go look at that now. I haven't made that connection. Not at all.
I mean, I can kind of see it. It's a little weird, but yeah. So maybe someday that's somebody who plays the banjo. Maybe that'll get me a role or something. Who knows?
Yeah, and I want to get to the banjo. I got questions about the banjo. So the last episode I did, 2 episodes ago, harpist Aaron Hill, and I had never talked to anybody who played a harp, and I learned so much about that. So there's all this unique stuff going on. I thought the banjo is so unique. But let's get to that. Let's get to your music. So this is something new for you, the music, and you kind of alluded to that a little bit. Something happened on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2021, with respect to your music. What was that?
Here is what happened on the lovely Valentine's Day of last year. That was the day I contacted a music producer in town. His name is Ovi, O-V-I. It's such a cool name. his real name's a lot longer than that. He's Romanian. I can't really pronounce it. Yeah, but I had recorded, just playing around at home, this song I'd been working on with a buddy. We were joking around that it was kind of like a metal song, and we were kind of screaming it out and making it all ridiculous. But I did end up recording just a vocal track and a piano track for it. And I was like, what now? Because honestly, this sounds terrible. Like, you listen back to yourself and you're like, this is bad. Like, can someone make this better? So then I started trying to figure out what that person is. And I got to the point of realizing, I think it's a music producer. At that point, I Googled music producers in Vancouver and sent my track to the first one I found. And I got really lucky because Ovi's great. I've worked with him on lots of songs since. But yeah, that was the day I sent in my music to a producer for the first time. And I went out on a limb. And he said yes. He said he could. The track was good and stuff. In my mind, he could fix it. Yeah.
So that was the real start, I guess, of the music journey, if you will. I mean, it started early,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, anyone's musical journey starts when you start having experiences in life or whatever. But yeah, I'd been playing around with things up until that point. But I remember I did not think I was a singer, because I remember him saying, Ovi, I'm going to hire a singer to sing on this track. And he said, no, we recorded this fine. You could sing it.
Now, have you done voice lessons, or is this?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
A little bit growing up. Yeah, I dabbled. I was in choirs and stuff. I love singing in choir. It's so much fun. I like harmony.
You have a lot of control. I mean, I've listened to your songs, and there's just so much control and elevation and just so many things happening that as I'm listening to it, I mean, you're professional. It sounds really good. So that's I wonder if, like, what was your journey before that as you started to engage that, because you were so new to it in terms of the engaging with a producer. So, but listen, sticking with your music, your most recent release, it's called Fight for You. And it tackles mental health as its sort of underlying theme. And you say, fight for you, I'll keep on fighting for you. And, as I'm listening to that, and I'm old school, right? I like to look at lyrics at the same time and things like that. But it sounds like you're making a pledge to the listener. There's a level of credibility and so personal with it. But I feel like you're speaking to me when I'm listening to it. So what brought about this song, or what brought about that devotion? Was it intentional?
Yes.
You're going with it, right?
I'm going with it. Yeah, I think that's such a good question. It's a lot packed in there. But I think part of it might have been just like, there's that performance element of it, maybe, that kind of gives you that sense of connection. And of course, the composition and the production, like, that goes into it, that sound. But on the songwriting side of things, I had my mom's help writing this one, actually. I got it to the point of having a melody, but I had no words. So I recorded myself. I should release this as a demo or like a track. It's just me singing, like, just any word. So I was sitting there just going like, the plant is on the counter, like, and I sent that to my mom so she could get a feel for it. And I was like, what pictures come to mind based on this melody? What does this evoke for you? And she heard a conversation between someone in like a support or a caregiving role, and like that person that is going through a mental illness or some type of issue, and they feel like they can't reach them, and like that person can only save themselves. And I think every family probably has a history of mental illness. Like, I don't know if I've met anyone who hasn't. So I think it's relatable. We all know, we've had those conversations, Yes. So yeah, I think a lot of that phrasing that came from my mom, when she was doing that prose in the beginning, I was able to use a lot of that, which gave that very realistic feel, I think.
It did. And it sounds like we got to give credit to Mom. So
yeah, I probably should have put her as a songwriter on the song.
Is she, like I was going to say, she's going to be inside the CD sleeve, Mom?
Yeah.
No, but seriously, and you said something interesting too. You had the melody, but you didn't have the lyrics. Is that how you normally do it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Every once in a while, you think of a phrase that's so like turnkey, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's a phrase. But most of the time it's melody. I get the structure and the melody of a song before I can fit words in.
When do you get that? Are you on a walk? Are you?
Yeah, usually walking.
Yeah.
Isn't that where all good ideas come from?
Usually
like
on
walks, showers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like literally, that's the only two places to get ideas: is walks and showers, or airplanes. I find.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because those things you just mentioned, right? A walk, a run, somewhere where you have some personal space, and with this one, being about mental health, those are all things that kind of are escapes, right?
Yeah,
we're in our own space and they're escapes. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you have a few other singles though. You have a song called Maybe. You have one called Beautiful Big Blue. You have one that is called Young and in Love. Mm-hmm. They all appear to have some sort of personal connection. They all seem relatable to the singer. To the listener. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is as I'm listening to it, sometimes we write songs and they're a personal thing for ourselves. We write them for ourselves. Are you, by design, were you trying to make that connection? I'm going to write this. I'm going to try and make this connection with the listener. Or was it, I'm just writing this because it's connecting for me? What can we continue to expect from Sarah Tolle when it comes to the music? Like, is this the foundation? Is this our baseline? Like, can we expect more of this from you? I guess is what I'm wondering.
Yes, I have not thought of it this way. But just now when you were saying that, it finally occurred to me, like what you meant. Yeah, okay. You're right. A lot of my songs are almost like I'm saying a message to someone. And the next two releases are definitely the same way. It's like almost a dialogue style, But I think it honestly maybe just be born out of necessity for me. I don't think it's been that intentional. I do intentionally choose songs that are somewhat socially healing or positive, because I write a lot of really crass comedy stuff that's just like, is it adding to the world? I don't know. So I haven't published a lot of my crass, gross stuff about like farts and poop and things like that.
Right.
But
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live. Yeah. We'll save that for that.
Yeah.
But I will say that it makes it easier for me to write songs when it's easier to write when you have a message. You know how it is when you have an audience, it's easier to know what to say because you can picture the person and you're like, this is what I would say.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just curious because sometimes we have a formula by intent, by design, and sometimes we have a formula just out of necessity because that's what it is. And I'm just sensing that theme. So if I was to picture your album, it's almost like you're putting together this album with this sort of underlying support theme. And I think I wrote down, will she be fighting for me in the future? As if you're fighting for me through these songs or through your people who are your fans, because you've got like, I don't know, 230,000 streams or so of this stuff. So people are listening to whatever message you're putting out.
Yeah.
So listen, you mentioned earlier, I want to bring the banjo into this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I connected with you on social media and I've been listening to your instrument of choice, which is the banjo. And here's the interesting thing is I didn't realize you were playing a banjo until I saw you playing the banjo. Oh. So I heard your music first and I'm listening to that and I was like, picking steel guitar? What is that? Right? Sounds familiar. I think I've heard it. Now, it could be my own disability because I am hard of hearing in one ear. So, I hear things sometimes that aren't happening. But then I saw the pictures and I was like, get out of here. She's playing a banjo. No way. How cool is this? Right? So how did the relationship with the banjo start?
Okay. The banjo is this whole thing in my life. The banjo, I don't know. I've always loved banjo so much. And I never picked one up until like less than a year ago because I felt like it. And they had them for free at the public library in Vancouver. You can rent them for like 3 weeks for free. So I was like, yes, amazing. And then I thought, I'll just get it, see if I like it. And I loved it, of course. So then I bought one. I just love the way it sounds. I don't know. I think there's something in me that is like this. I'm an old soul of like Celtic origin and like Southern roots or something, because I just really like bluegrass. I like that Appalachian folk, which comes from Ireland. And I also really love like the music that comes from Africa. The banjo is originally from Africa. And I just always loved music that comes from Africa, such as a lot of Latin music, salsa. I'm big into salsa dancing. And that's a blend of African influences and other things. So I just think it's called to me, and I love it so much. The banjo that you hear in my music, though, sometimes isn't me playing, to be honest, because I'm not very good at banjo. So you might hear a more processed version. For example, I couldn't play fast enough to play it in Beautiful Big Blue. So I ended up playing it slow and speeding it up with software and transposing it with software because I couldn't play different keys.
That's interesting.
Or Ovi. One time, Ovi doesn't play the banjo, but he was producing one of my songs and wanted a banjo in it. And so he went out and rented one for a day to get that sound that he wanted. So he plays the banjo, even though he does. We're just a bunch of people who can't play the banjo, basically.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we got insider information. So
yeah.
You're a bit of a producer yourself then, in terms of what you're doing with the banjo and post-production and sort of getting the sounds that you want out of the instrument. But listen, I see you with that instrument all the time. So, and what I mean by that is, the comparison. I was, again, looking at all of your different things that you've got going on in the social media world. And there's a movie, I remember watching a movie. It's called La Bamba, and it's a story about Richie Valens. And in that movie, he's always got his guitar. Everywhere he goes, he's got his guitar, right? Like he's in a bar, he's got his guitar. He's in a field, he's got his guitar. Where's Guido going with this? So as I'm looking at the social media stuff, I'm like, okay, I've seen you, I've seen you in fields, in farms, on hills, fences, rock beds, beaches, streets, your home. And I don't know where else, but you've always got the banjo. I'm like, does she take it everywhere? Does she take it with her everywhere she goes? Okay, before we find out if Sarah takes her banjo absolutely everywhere, let's hear a quick word from a friend of the podcast.
Recipes at My Table is a work of family, love of food, and sharing of stories. The stories keep the memories alive and make every day a party in my kitchen. Join me for the sharing of traditional Italian recipes and so much more. Visit me at www.recipesatmytable.com.
Okay, now, before that quick break, I was just about to ask Sarah about her banjo and if she takes it everywhere she goes. Let's tune in and find out what the answer to that is. I've seen you in fields, in farms, on hills, fences, rock beds, beaches, streets, your home, and I don't know where else, but you've always got the banjo. I'm like, does she take it everywhere? Does she take it with her everywhere she goes?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, mostly. I purposefully bought, there's kind of two main types of banjo. One of them is really heavy because it has a big wooden panel thing at the back, a resonator, it's called. But I got a claw hammer open back banjo that doesn't have that, so it's quite light. And I got that on purpose because I knew I would be taking Julia, my banjo, everywhere. And I do take her to quite a lot of locations. Yes, I practice every day because I like it.
Does anyone ever look at you and like, she's carrying a banjo, or hey, what's with the banjo, or any questions? Or?
Not really.
No?
Not really. Sometimes if I'm sitting down playing, people will stop and listen because sometimes I'll play on this sidewalk or like a bench or something when the weather's nice. So sometimes people will stop and listen, but I usually get kind of embarrassed and then I get all shy.
Yeah, I can relate to that in my own hobby world sometimes with the guitar.
Yeah.
You said Julia.
Mhm.
You named your banjo?
Yeah.
Is that from, can you share what Julia is, or?
Oh yeah, that's just the name that came to me. I grew up on a farm, and there'd be, cats would just kind of come and go, and you just give the cat the first name that you think of. And so that's the same approach I took with the banjo. Is the first name I thought of. So yeah.
Okay, so Julia. And you know what?
No significance whatsoever.
No significance, just random Julia. And so we've thanked Mom, and it sounds like we also have to thank the Vancouver Library that lets you take out banjos.
Yeah, they have a really good music lending library.
Wow. That's incredible. So I'm just making a list of places that we're going to thank after for giving us Sarah Tolle and her music. So you also blog a fair bit, and I found this really intriguing and interesting. Some of your blogs provide information and advice on how to use online tools and other resources. So, for example, one of your latest ones includes songwriting tips. You have how to be an artist on Spotify, resources for independent artists, and many more along those themes of being somebody who's very helpful. I don't know that that's commonplace in artist world or in general. In some parts of the way days go these days. What motivates you to be so open and friendly and helpful? And I guess especially when it comes to the arts and music.
Oh, I mean, that's great. I mean, it's a nice compliment. Thank you. That's nice feedback. It's coming off that way. But I don't know. It's just, I've gotten tons of help along the way. It's tons. It's crazy. I think when you start putting yourself out there and just taking care of yourself, kind of in a weird way, putting yourself first, people just have an easier time as well. Like people around you, it kind of makes their lives better, and they're willing to help you as well.
Yeah.
So it feels really, I guess that's a really convoluted way of me saying that. It feels like reciprocal,
Yeah.
Especially with the blog. I work in SEO, and I do a lot of organic traffic building. So it's partially me knowing like how to build organic website traffic to my site. But I also discovered in doing some articles with local artists, or even not local artists, it's really good networking as well. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of forces you to like go out, build some relationships, ask some people some questions. It's great networking. So it's not entirely generous, I have to say. Like there's also that I get a lot out of it as well.
No, hey, that's pretty transparent. It just comes across like I think of, the music world and the art world. And while I think we like to see other people succeed, there's also I recognize there's a level of competition among artists, right? And if you get the inside edge on something, not everybody's always willing to share and to help each other out. And I said earlier, I predicate my podcast on the ability to help people or to help them move forward in whatever it may be, whether it's career or growth or mental health, whatever the case is. When I saw that, I was like, wow, she's somebody who's pursuing her own arts and career in that perhaps. And, but she's willing to share that experience with others so that they can maybe get a little further themselves through it. So
definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of competition, and I think competition often comes from this place of scarcity and fear. And I know in the Artist's Way book, which I really like by Julia Cameron, she talks a whole chapter, I think, writes a chapter about competition and how we just can't afford it. Like creative beings, we just can't afford it. It just creates too much of this scarcity mindset of someone else already got it, so I can't have it.
Right.
And it's demotivating. It just breeds fear. And,
why can't we have it together?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a yes and world, not a me or this type of world. I like to believe that. So I think it's helpful for my mindset if I always try to catch myself because I'm quite competitive, but I try to catch myself always and just remind myself like there can be both. Everyone can, we can all make great music. There's no limit on great music.
I agree with you. I think, having that little bit of competitive is what keeps us going, but we can also keep us going by, living through even the success of our friends, family, and strangers, if we can help them out too.
Yeah.
So Sarah, without giving up too much, because, maybe it'll show up on your blog. I don't know. I know you have an insiders club where people can sign up and they're going to get the inside scoop on Sarah and what she's working on. I'm going to have to do that, eh? I'm going to have to.
Do it. Yeah.
I'm going to have to sign up. But can you give us some, what's next? What's coming up for you that you can share with us?
Okay. Well, I will caveat this by saying the Insiders Club is really just my newsletter.
Okay.
So, that's all it is. And I also don't like to overdo the email situation. It's not like an automated drip feed, like buy everything now situation. It's like a once every 4 months, here's what I'm up to. But here's what I'm up to.
Yeah.
I am about to release my 5th single on March 18th. It is called Like It or Not. It used to be called This Is How I Look Naked, but when I filmed a music video teaser for it, the music video producer guy who had never heard the title of the song, he listened to it and thought it was called Like It or Not. And so I'm like, you know what? That's better feedback. That's a better title. So I switched it. Because if that's what he naturally thinks when hearing it, that's what other people think too, right? Probably. Chances are. So that song is about body acceptance, straight up. It's a very no-nonsense comedy song about bodies and nakedness.
Interesting.
Yes.
March 18th, Like It or Not. Now, you, on some of your social media, you posted some photo shoots or shots from the video. Is that what it was?
Yeah, we filmed.
That's back to this song.
Yeah, it's for this song, yeah. Mm-hmm. Me and my little, flower bikini thing. Yeah, that was really uncomfortable.
On a cold Vancouver day.
Itchy. Yeah.
You know what though? I was reading some of the verbiage. Like, that's pretty courageous of you, and again, very open in how you kind of described it. And I think when people see somebody in a lead role do that type of stuff or talk about that stuff, it makes it a lot easier. Like it makes the self a lot easier.
Yeah, it does, definitely. Having that, I don't know, example or something. Yeah,
right.
Set for you. Kind of makes it a safe space. You're like, oh yeah, we could do that because that person did that. Yeah, I definitely want to set that example. I think, yeah, that's definitely what I'm doing with this song. I mean, it really started as a song. I was just thinking to myself with acting, like, what if I'm naked on set and I'm just walking around and everything's hanging out, like all these people are 3 inches away from me, like smelling me and all this stuff, And then I just had this calm down Sarah moment where it was like, Sarah, that's just how it is. That's how you look and that's how it'll be. And that's it. There's nothing more. Everything else is in your head.
You just go with the flow.
Yeah. And so it was just that moment. And that little phrase stuck with it. It's like it or not, this is how I look naked. I don't know why it's not even that catchy, but anyways, yeah, that stuck with me. And I think that song turned into more of an outward message as I wrote it. It feels, more communicating to others rather than a reminder to self. But either way it works, whatever way people want to take it. Hopefully it breeds a little more tolerance and chillfulness about how we look.
Like it or not. Like it or not. That's cool. It's a cool title. It's coming out March 18th. Now I got to ask, do you have, you're doing all these singles. Do you have a plan for the rest of the year? Are we going to look forward to more stuff the rest of the year?
Yeah. I think I have 8 that are decided, 8 singles for this year. I'd like to do 10. So there's room for a few more to slip in there.
Wow.
I'm just not sure. I have a big list I'm trying to whittle it down from.
So
But yeah,
you've obviously worked on other material then.
oh yeah, tons for sure. Mm-hmm.
Are you going to take it on the road? Like, will we look at a little bit of a road show at any point, or?
Maybe. I've never performed a real show live, so I do have to get some chops, you know? Got to learn how to stand on stage and like do my instruments, hook everything up. I actually have to learn what kind of team I even need. Like, a lot of my music's a bit on the electronic side.
Right.
So yeah, it's a logistical thing. I would have to figure that out. Maybe.
I'm looking forward. That would be really cool. It'll be nice to see the collection of the songs kind of come together, and what they look like and how they play out when you listen to them all together. I want to thank you. Like, this has been a really fantastic chat and entertaining and everything and more than I expected. And your energy is exactly what I thought it would be. It comes from the songs and your personality is a fun personality. And I think the listeners are going to enjoy that. I want to ask you this, though, I guess in closing, is there anything that you'd want to leave us with? I get selfish when I ask the questions because there are things I want to know and things that I think listeners want to know. But I always say at the end, well, is there anything that you'd like to tell us? Maybe I didn't cover it off, or any other information you'd like to give us.
Well, I do have a pretty consistent message that I think I don't hit it on the nose a lot, but this is kind of what I stand for. Is kind of a. I like to create this sense of safety for people and sense of just realness and coming back down to earth. I think that what people can be craving right now, and maybe what's missing is a bit of just like, let's take a minute and just get back down to the roots. Let's be real about what's going on. Let's be honest. Let's just like forget the rules, forget yourself, and be real. For a minute. And I think that that's something I want to bring out through my art. And it's definitely a message I always want to show people, is that like who you are is enough. Like everything on top of that is like frills and dressing and stuff. And if you're a musician and you just started 3 months ago, you're good enough to make a song. If you want to produce a professionally made song, like you can do that. There's no bar of quality that you have to like be at. So yeah, that's kind of my message that I've been putting out, especially in my social media videos, like how you've seen the stuff that's kind of raw and vulnerable, because I think we need more of that. It's just everything's too behind the filter these days.
Yeah, and I think that's you're giving other people confidence. And that's sort of, I guess that's what attracted me first, was that I saw this message of shared confidence. And I was like, I want to explore this. I want to understand this a little bit more. And I want to be able to share this with folks. So thank you. I want to thank you for your transparency on that. And I guess, like it or not, that's the naked truth from Sarah Tolle, honorary Canadian via Wisconsin, singer, songwriter, actor, screenwriter. I'm going to have all of the resource links and contact information in the show notes so that everybody, you can all enjoy her content and connect with her. Of course, stay tuned. We are going to hear from Sarah on the podcast show a little bit later with a couple of her songs, Fight for You, and we're going to hear the new one, Like It or Not. Right, Sarah?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I hope that you come back and we can check in on you maybe a little bit later with some of the other tunes, if that's cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to come back and chat. And then maybe you can do a little dance for Like It or Not. Yep, we'll have a special dance episode.
I might have to get some lessons on that.
We can make that happen.
All right, thanks, Sarah.
Awesome, thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sarah Tolle. I certainly did, and I'm looking forward to catching up with her again. But for now, we would like to listen to some of her music. We're going to listen to a song from Sarah Tolle called Fight for You.
Where is the place you go
is Sarah Tolle with her song Fight For You. I will have the links to that song available in the podcast notes. You can also hear Sarah Tolle on thepathradio.com. All right, now speaking of thepathradio.com, if you have not checked it out, I hope that you do. If you like streaming music and audio content, thepathradio.com provides that day and night. It's free. There's also a free iOS app that allows you to take it on the go. There's no impeding advertisements on the app or any limited functionality. So if you get a chance, check out thepathradio.com. There's different music themes every day. Also access to podcasts and other content on thepathradio.com. All right, I'd like to switch gears now. And we know that at some point in the podcast, I usually read to you one of my opinion or research articles from guidoprano.com off the blog section. And one of the topics that I tackled this past month focused on the type of advice that we might be getting from our leaders, if you will, and what we're doing with that information. So the article is called Poli-Medical, the New Alternate Facts. Here we go. As I lay on the emergency room table with my 8-year-old arm outstretched, the nurse asked me if I wanted a needle to numb the pain. The doctor was about to stitch my hand that had been sliced open after some sibling roughhousing near the public water fountain landed me on a broken glass. I declined, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't think I needed it. As I took the stitches, I remember them telling my parents they were going to give me a tetanus shot. And I was okay with that too. Early childhood health challenges perhaps made me more comfortable with needles than most children. I don't remember getting the chickenpox vaccine, but it probably didn't bother me either. Unfortunately, I still caught chickenpox, and bad enough that I have scars today. I have often wondered if my parents faced the same dilemma of choices with vaccines back then as some seem to clamor about with today's COVID-19 vaccine. So I called my parents and asked them, why and how did you decide to give me all those shots back when I was a kid? My mom looked at me puzzled over our FaceTime session and said, "The doctor told us it was a good idea." "Did you ask anyone else?" I inquired. "Who else would we ask? We go see the doctor to make sure you are healthy. He tells us what he knows. He went to school for that stuff. He knows what to tell us. We listened. All my kids are okay." She gets a bit defensive as she continues answering, wondering why I am asking this decades later. As I set out to explain, she waves her hand from the back of her ear to the front of her face, towards me on the camera. She lets out a gasp and says, "Everyone wants to be a doctor today." Then she says, "I knew this guy back in Italy who was a painter. He went around telling everyone he was a doctor. And well, in a way, he was. He was a doctor of painting, and that's what his business card said. If I wanted to know about painting, I would go see him. One day, he tries to give me advice about medicine. If I wasn't feeling good, I'd go see a doctor who knew something about medicine. Everyone is a doctor of something." She changes the subject as she gets annoyed with the overall indifference people have towards each other and real doctors. As I digest the conversation and think about some of the recent announcements in Ontario with respect to the pandemic, I realize that my mother was talking about more than doctors and medicine. She was talking about trusting information based on knowledge, experience, and credentials. She was also talking about caring enough about the person next to you, regardless how well you know them. My parents respected the position of the doctor who practiced medicine because that was the doctor's expertise. If the medicine doctor wanted to give them advice on politics, they didn't listen. The same if a politician wanted to give them advice on medicine, they didn't listen. Ontario has arguably seen a poor blending of politics and medicine throughout the pandemic. Announcements often saw Premier Ford flanked by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Moore, before him, Dr. Williams. when Dr. Moore announced that the mask mandate would be lifted for schools, but then went on to say that he would continue to wear one, it cemented my earlier suspicion, and perhaps my parents too, that there has been a misrepresentation between political and medical advice all along. None of us wanting to believe that, but it's hard not to with the often confusing messaging. At almost 90 years old, my parents don't have much of a filter anymore. They're not out to impress anyone. That one there just says what the other one wants him to say, is their observation when they see Dr. Moore talk as Premier Ford flanks him during the now infamous announcement scrums. It is during these events that the term Poli-Medical comes to mind. Poli-Medical advice is that which has its genetic makeup from politics and medicine, with politics taking precedence, which may be the new norm for Ontario. It eerily reminds me of the term alternate facts, which for some became an acceptable reality of misinformation and disinformation. See my article, Is Your Opinion Supporting Misinformation or Disinformation? Poli-Medical advice can also contribute to divisive behavior as it pits people at odds with one another because the information can be so obscure, void of evidence, miscommunicated, or so misrepresented that anyone can interpret it to their liking and purpose. It's blendable information that sheds accountability. The do what I say, not what I do approach is at a minimum questionably irresponsible, especially from a chief medical officer of health. My parents aren't politicians or doctors, but I must go with their experience that doctors should provide doctor advice. And right now, Ontarians are only getting fists full of Poli-Medical advice that is fueling indifference and divisiveness instead of bringing people together. This is an opinion article by me, Guido Perino, of the Go On With Guido podcast. So it does seem like everybody's just really tired of the pandemic. I think everybody was tired after year one. We had hope after year two, and we've entered a mode, it seems, where some of the leaders have said, hey, we just got to learn to live with it. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And there's just a lot of other elements that come into play when it comes to people and their health and just personal situations. Of course, economics, politics. But I wanted to share with you, I want to take you back, actually. I don't want to take you back to last year. I don't want to take you back to the year before. I don't want to take you back to 2019. I want to take you back to Friday, May 30th, 1919. This is something from science.org. I'm going to read you something. What's incredible about this, when you hear it, I want you to remember that date, May 30th, 1919. There are parts of what I'm going to read you that sound like 2022. If I didn't tell you the date was May 30th, 1919, have we learned anything as a society from that date to now? Listen to this and you be the judge. The lessons of the pandemic. The pandemic, which has just swept round the earth, has been without precedent. There have been more deadly epidemics, but they have been more circumscribed. There have been epidemics almost as widespread, but they have been less deadly. Floods, famines, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions have all written their stories in terms of human destruction almost too terrible for comprehension. Yet, never before has there been a catastrophe at once so sudden, so devastating, and so universal. The most astonishing thing about the pandemic was the complete mystery which surrounded it. Nobody seemed to know what the disease was, where it came from, or how to stop it. Anxious minds are inquiring today whether another wave of it will come again. The fact is that although influenza is one of the oldest known of the epidemic diseases, it is the least understood. Science, which by patient and painstaking labor has done so much to drive other plagues to the point of extinction, has thus far stood powerless before it. There is doubt about the causative agent and the predisposing and aggravating factors. There has been a good deal of theorizing about these matters and some good research, but no common agreement has been reached with respect to them. The measures which were introduced for the control of the pandemic were based upon the slenderest of theories. It was assumed that the influenza could be stopped by the employment of methods which it was assumed would stop the other respiratory diseases. This double assumption proved to be a weak reed to lean upon. The respiratory diseases as a class are not under control. They constitute the most frequent cause of death, yet it is not known how they can be prevented. Three main factors stand in the way of prevention. First, public indifference. People do not appreciate the risks they run. The great complexity and range and severity of the respiratory infections confuse and hide the danger. The infections vary from the common cold to pneumonia. They are not at all separate entities by any means. An attack which begins as a coryza or rhinitis may develop into pharyngitis, tonsillitis, laryngitis, bronchitis, or pneumonia. The gravity increases with the progress toward the lungs. The infection sometimes seems to begin in the chest, sometimes in the throat, sometimes in the head. It may stop where it started or pass through several phases. This is the story of the common cold. It is generally more discomforting than dangerous. Most people get well without skillful treatment or indeed any great interference with business. No specific virus is known to produce it. There is another group of diseases, a more unusual one, which is often at first confused with the foregoing. This includes the specific infections such as diphtheria, measles, and scarlet fever. Influenza is in this class. The symptoms at the beginning may be identical with those of the common cold, and the true nature of the disease escape notice until the patient shows unmistakable and alarming symptoms. By that time, other persons may be infected. The second factor which stands in the way of prevention is the personal character of the measures which must be employed. The enteric infections can be controlled by procedures of a general sort which impose no great restriction upon the conduct of the individual. But this is not true of the respiratory infections. The waste products of influenza containing the infective virus are not deposited in a vessel or a sewerage system where they can be properly dealt with, as in typhoid. The exuda of the nose and throat are projected into the air and allowed to pollute the hands, the food, the clothing, and in fact, the entire environment of the infected person. This is done unconsciously, invisibly, unexpectedly. General methods directed against this kind of germ distribution must necessarily be of limited value. It is an epidemiological point of great interest that the kind of preventative measures which must be taken in order to control the respiratory infections devolve upon the persons who are already infected, while those who are liable to contract the disease can do little to protect themselves. The burden is placed where it is not likely to be well carried. It does not lie in human nature for a man who thinks he has only a slight cold to shut himself up in the rigid isolation as a means of protecting others on the bare chance that his cold may turn out to be a really dangerous infection. Third, the highly infectious nature of the respiratory infections adds to the difficulty of their control. The period of incubation varies considerably. In some infections, it may be as short as a day or two, and the disease may be transmissible before the patient himself is aware that he is attacked. The list of the obstacles which stand in the way of controlling the respiratory diseases may fittingly be closed by remarking that healthy persons often carry about in their persons the germs of disease, thereby unconsciously acting as a continuing danger to themselves and a menace to others. It is not to be wondered at, therefore, that of all the things which were done to stop the spread of influenza, nothing seems to have had any material effect upon it. This may all seem very discouraging, but it need not depress anybody. The control of typhoid once seemed an impossible task. To rightly measure a difficulty is often the first step toward overcoming it. What is said here of the influenza pandemic is put forward only as the writer's view at the present time. Nobody can now speak authoritatively upon this subject. When all the facts are brought together, some of the ideas which are held today may be found to require modification. We are all still too close to the event to fully measure it. Individual researches and the efforts of innumerable workers must be reported and evaluated. The mass of statistical data which has accumulated in cities, towns, camps, and hospitals must be assorted, tabulated, and studied before it will be possible to speak with anything like finality as to the efficacy of the measures of control employed. Until this is done, it will be impossible to give the number of persons attacked, their age, sex, condition, and race, the complications and sequel of the disease, much less the relations which these factors bear to the preventative measures. This work is now engaging the attention of many experts. Public health officers, skillful workers in bacteriology and pathology, and the clinicians who have had opportunity to study the disease intensively are making their reports. It will be months, and perhaps years, before the records of all the scientific study connected with the pandemic are brought to a conclusion. A good deal may confidently be expected of the work which has been done from so many angles and in so many places. How far the mysteries which have obscured the true nature of influenza for so many years will be cleared up must be left for time to show. No disease is more difficult to study than the pandemic influenza. It comes, it spreads, it vanishes with unexampled suddenness. It possesses such terrific energy that little time is afforded during its visitations in which to study it in a careful and painstaking manner. Both its total absence and its total great prevalence stand in the way of its study. But it will be asked, is influenza entirely absent in the intervals between epidemics? Opinion is divided on this point. Some hold that pandemic influenza is a separate infection. Others think it is always with us. It does not ordinarily manifest such a fatal aspect as the recently seen, but many of the symptoms of the usual epidemic and the extraordinary pandemic influenza are the same. Perhaps the recent pandemic is best explained on the assumption that a particularly virulent type of the common infection was to blame. All attempts at excluding influenza from a community seem to have failed. There is one and only one way to absolutely prevent it, and that is by establishing absolute isolation. It is necessary to shut off those who are capable of giving off the virus from those who are capable of being infected, or vice versa. This is a very difficult procedure. First, it is difficult because it is impossible to discover all the virus producers. Second, it is difficult because it is impossible to know who are and who are not immune. Complete isolation is not feasible for entire cities, nor for parts of cities, nor for individuals in cities. It is feasible for some small towns and villages, and some have tried it with success. The fact that in many instances the attack has been merely postponed by no means invalidates the principle. It is natural to suppose that a phenomenon of such general nature as influenza pandemic has had an equally general cause, and the only cause which most people can think of as general enough to give rise to a world pandemic is one which possesses an atmospheric or terrestrial character. This is a very old conception, and one which has survived all others, so far as the general public is concerned. In one of its forms, it is known as Sydenham's theory of epidemic constitution. In spite of the repeated statement that this theory has been discredited, there are many well-informed persons who believe, as Sydenham did, that there are general conditions beyond our knowledge which help to cause disease to assume a different aspect and prevalence in some years and at some seasons than others. As late as the pandemic of 1889-90, it was thought by many that the cause of the influenza outbreak was in some way connected with world conditions and quite independent of human intercourse. Today, there are some who think that the extraordinarily cold winter of 1917-18, followed by the hot summer, was largely responsible for the recent pandemic. Others believe that the Great War precipitated the plague. Not a few think that the infection was spontaneously developed in many places at about the same time. The arguments which have been made in support of these suppositions are often ingenuous, if not convincing. Unfortunately, they seldom stand the test of scientific analysis. The weight of evidence now available indicates that the immediate cause of the great pandemic of 1918 was an infective virus which passed from person to person until it had spread all over the world. The method of the spread is believed to have been the same as in other respiratory infections. The reasons for the belief that this was transmitted in this manner lies chiefly in the fact that the pandemic spread rapidly and no more so than people traveled from point to point. Nobody so far has positively shown what the virus is, nor how it leaves or enters the body, nor at what period in this disease it may be transmitted to others. Some hold that the Pfeiffer bacillus is the causative agent. Others believe that there is a filterable virus which acts independently or in conjunction with the Pfeiffer bacillus. Nearly all agree that the influenza and pneumonia were independent diseases and that the high fatality was due to a very remarkable reduction of resistance to the pneumonia brought about by the influenza. Being of the respiratory type, it is believed that the virus leaves the body by way of the nose and mouth. It is supposed to enter the body by way of the nose, mouth, or eyes. But it may be asked, if the influenza and the Pfeiffer bacillus are always with us, why should the disease suddenly become so different from its ordinary type in respect to severity, infection, and complications? Nobody has answered these questions. There are various ways of replying to them. One is to assume that the infective poison was brought into civilized countries from some distant point where it originated. Another is to suppose that it developed locally. It is not possible to follow these theories through all their details here. The arguments are not convincing by any means. Certainly, a complete explanation of the pandemic requires a demonstration of how the disease developed, wherever that development took place. The development of the disease was undoubtedly a complicated biological phenomenon. A virus was produced which was capable of overcoming the resistance of a large proportion of those who were exposed to it. Reductions in virulence are familiar occurrences in connection with infective poisons. Controlled attenuations have been at the foundation of a great deal of the best work in immunology since the time of Pasteur. Increases are less often observed, but it is a well-established fact that a virus which has practically lost its pathogenic properties can be exalted to a high state of virulence by inoculating it into susceptible animals. The spontaneous recrudescences of virulent disease in epidemics, which sometimes appear to have originated in mild epidemic infections, suggest the same process. Reasoning by analogy, it would appear not unlikely that an influenza virus which existed somewhere, perhaps among persons who had become accustomed to it and had consequently gained a toleration to it, was introduced among others to whom it was a stranger and who were consequently particularly susceptible to it. This would naturally result in an outburst which might attain pandemic proportions. The pandemic has shown, among other things, how widely and how quickly respiratory infections may travel. It has shown what an enormous interchange of germs takes place in the respiratory apparatus of those who live in cities and towns and villages. It is disquieting to find how readily and frequently the bacterial products of the sick gain entrance into the noses and mouths of other persons, but the facts must not be hidden if to acknowledge them will do any good. The pandemic calls attention not only to the fact that there is an interchange of mouth germs wherever people meet, but it illustrates how frequently respiratory infections may occur to which little or no attention is given. Some people think that the pandemics of colds occur from time to time, which are almost as universal as was the recent influenza. Their pandemic character is not suspected because they are so mild. A pandemic of influenza swept over the United States 5 months before the fatal wave, but it attracted notice only in a few places. The frequent presence of epidemics of colds affords the groundwork upon which other respiratory diseases should be studied. It has been well said by Sir Arthur Newsholme, Medical Officer of Health to the Local Government Board of England, that until the common respiratory infections are studied and controlled, it will be impossible to understand and manage influenza. With this opinion, the present writer heartily agrees. The way to study influenza is to study the common cold. The place to study the common cold is a village or other circumscribed environment. The time to study it is now. The great lesson of the pandemic is to call attention to the prevalence of respiratory diseases in ordinary times, to the indifference with which they are ordinarily regarded, and to our present inability to protect ourselves against them. They are not amenable to control through sanitary works, as are typhoid, malaria, and so many other diseases. They must be controlled by administrative procedures and by the exercise of appropriate measures of self-protection. Will there be another visitation? Nobody can positively answer this question. Influenza commonly sweeps in more than one wave over a country. America experienced an unmistakable but mild wave before the great one of September and October, and since then there have been local disturbances corresponding to fresh outbreaks in many places. In England, a new and alarming prevalence has been reported. It would not be surprising if there should be another pandemic in the United States. The steps which should be taken to suppress the disease if it breaks out afresh are such as seem best for the maintenance of general health and protection from respiratory infections as a class. If doubt arises as to the probable efficacy of measures which seem so lacking in specificity, it must be remembered that it is better for the public morale to be doing something than nothing, and the general health will not suffer for the additional care which is given it. First, as to the things which it is desirable not to do. It is not desirable to close theaters, churches, and schools unless public opinion emphatically demands it. It is not desirable to make the general wearing of masks compulsory. Patients should not be masked except when traveling from one point to another. They need air. Suspects should wear masks until their cases are positively diagnosed. Influenza patients should be kept separate from other patients. A case of influenza should be dealt with as though it was contagious as a case of smallpox. There is danger in the presence of the sick, in his eating utensils, in his clothes, and in the air into which he coughs and sneezes, if indeed these respiratory symptoms are present. He is to be regarded as much more seriously ill than his visible symptoms perhaps indicate. It is worthwhile to give more attention to the avoidance of unnecessary personal risks and to the promotion of better personal health. Books have been written on the subject. The writer's idea of the most essential things to do, remember, are embodied in the following 12 condensed rules which were prepared in September, recommended by the Surgeon General of Attorney and published by order of the Secretary of War to be given all possible publicity. 1. Avoid needless crowding. Influenza is a crowd disease. 2. Smother your coughs and sneezes. Others do not want the germs which you would throw away. 3. Your nose, not your mouth, was made to breathe through. Get the habit. 4. Remember the 3 C's, a clean mouth, clean skin, and clean clothes. 5. Try to keep cool when you walk and warm when you ride and sleep. 6. Open the windows, always at home and at night, at the office when practicable. 7. Food will win the war if you give it a chance. Help by choosing and chewing your food well. 8. Your fate may be in your own hands. Wash your hands before eating. 9. Don't let the waste products of digestion accumulate. Drink a glass or 2 of water on getting up. 10. Do not use a napkin, towel, spoon, fork, glass, or cup which has been used by another person and not washed. 11. Avoid tight clothes, tight shoes, tight gloves. Seek to make nature your ally, not your prisoner. 12. When the air is pure, breathe all of it you can. Breathe deeply. Well, there you have it. From science.org, that's an article. Friday, May 30th, 1919. There's a lot of parts in there that sure don't sound over 100 years old. Not at all. Social behaviors, advice, political advice, medical advice sure doesn't sound over 100 years old. Sounds like some of it could just have been yesterday or today. Anyways, enough pandemic. Be good to each other out there. Stay safe, regardless what side of the belief system you are on when it comes to whatever is going on with the pandemic right now. All right, and I thought we would continue the series with the information from the Farmer's Almanac. Many of you have been enjoying some of the content from there, and I thought that given that we are getting past winter, heading into summer, maybe some summer planning, what does the weather hold in store for us? So this is generally speaking, of course, but here's what the Almanac says. Summer temperatures will be cooler than normal from Quebec westward to Alberta and northward to the Arctic Ocean, and hotter than normal elsewhere. Precipitation will be below normal in Manitoba, most of Saskatchewan, northern Alberta, the Northwest Territories, and western and central Nunavut, and above normal elsewhere. If you look at the map, it shows that western Canada is going to be hot and rainy. As you start moving eastward, it becomes cool and dry. Through Ontario and most of Quebec, it's cool and rainy. And then on the east coast, it's hot and rainy. So our coasts are hot and rainy. In the middle, we've got cool, dry, cool, rainy. Up north of us, also cool, dry. So there's some interesting patterns for summer of 2022. Now, what we should still be aware of, though, is that it is summer, and we're going to be dealing with the sun. And in dealing with the sun, we're going to be dealing with the potential of how sun impacts our skin. And one of the pieces of information that I got from the Chemical and Engineering site, this is cen.acs.org, they have a periodic graph of the chemistry of how our skin responds to the sun. And here's what they say. They say, they provide a description, and how does the sun affect our skin? It says summers are filled with sunny days to enjoy the outdoors, but you need to bring along the proper sun protection to prevent skin damage. They look at the chemistry of the sun and the triggers in our skin. There's a section where they talk about the sun and UV radiation. The sun emits both ultraviolet radiation and visible light. 10% of sunlight is in the UV range. Exposure to UV light is what causes some people's skin to tan and burn. Now, UVC is absorbed by Earth's atmosphere before it even reaches us. UVB is the primary cause of sunburn, directly damages DNA in our skin cells. Now, UVA penetrates deep into the skin. It causes our skin cells to age and indirectly damages the cell's DNA. Now, it goes on to say skin damage from UV radiation can ultimately lead to skin cancer, but exposure to small amounts of UV light is important because our skin uses it to make vitamin D. Our body also produces something called melanin. It's a protective polymeric pigment that absorbs UV radiation and it dissipates it as heat. That prevents the light from damaging other molecules. Now, melanocytes, which are cells in the skin's epidermis, produce melanin. When people get exposed to UV light, these cells produce more melanin, leading to darkening of the skin. The UV radiation can directly damage DNA by causing DNA bases to react with each other. Then they form products like pyrimidine dimers, the primary cause of skin cancer in humans. The light can also damage DNA indirectly when excited melanin generates reactive oxygen species. DNA repair enzymes can fix damaged DNA by removing and correcting defective sections. But If cells become too damaged, they self-destruct, signaling immune cells with proteins including prostaglandins and cytokines. These proteins cause increased blood flow and inflammation, leading to the pain and sometimes redness of a sunburn. Well, there you go. A little bit of information on how the sun affects our skin, courtesy of cen.acs.org. And if you go to that site and you look it up, there's an actual pictograph that visually shows you the things that I read to you from that particular article online. You should always remember as well, please get your medical advice from your doctor or whatever medical facility that you normally get your advice from, because we are all different and we have different skin colors and conditions. So it's important that you get the right information for you to deal with the summer and the sun. So as we continue to emerge from the latest wave of COVID-19, and schools have changed some of the rules in terms of mask wearing and social distancing, I thought it would be interesting to get some perspective from some elementary school students. Those students happen to be my daughters. One of them actually caught COVID-19, and she was at home in isolation. And so I thought it would be interesting to get her perspective on what that experience was like, and then returning to school as the mask mandate has been lifted, and how she was treated and what that experience was like. And then for her younger sister to have watched her sister go through COVID, and what her reaction is going back to school with the changes. So let's have a listen in on that. It's a very, informal, innocent conversation. Both girls are being very transparent with their answers. And it's just neat to get that insight. Hopefully, if you're a student out there listening and it helps you, or if you're not a student, if you're just somebody who has similar concerns and the conversation helps you, then that was our purpose and our goal. Just to understand what some of the feelings and emotions might have been or are. So let's have a listen. Hi, Marina, and welcome, and thanks for having a chat with me on the podcast. Marina, you're my oldest daughter. We're going to talk to your sister a little bit later too, but you caught COVID.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Did you know that you had caught it when you caught it?
I mean, like, when I actually caught it, I didn't think so until, like, later on when I had symptoms.
What kind of symptoms did you have?
A very runny nose.
Anything else?
I coughed a little.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was, like, I felt like even after the runny nose, like a day after.
So when you had a runny nose, were you thinking, I've got COVID, or were you just thinking, I've got a runny nose?
I was like, oh, it's just a runny nose. Sometimes I just got a blow. I thought I might just be like sick with like a common cold or something, I wasn't thinking COVID. I was like, oh, I wear my mask. I follow all the precautions. I'm more safe than a lot of people I know. So,
and so what grade are you in?
8.
You're in grade 8. And do you think you caught it at school?
Probably, because nobody else in my family got it. And that's the only place I go where my family doesn't, besides my sister.
Do you have a moment where you can look back at school and say, oh, it was probably this moment or in this spot in the school or anything like that?
So like not where there was a moment of clarification where I'm like, oh yeah, that's where it must have happened. Like it's very unclear, but I've thought of like 2 possible situations where it could have happened.
Right.
Which was one of my friends outside at recess when they took their mask off who had COVID the previous week, because I don't know if they ended up like testing negative before they came back, or the kid who sat in front of me in class, he got COVID like the same week that I did, and he could have had it on Friday and then I guess spread it to me.
Was everybody following the rules in terms of mask wearing and things like that?
Mostly, because, I mean, sometimes they take them off. So you're allowed to take them off at recess. You're allowed to take them off for snack. Now, some people wear their masks under their noses. And Still. No, well, even now, they don't wear them at all. But I'd say that everyone was mostly following the protocols.
Did it bother you when they weren't?
Yes, it did. And I probably have even like scolded a few kids.
Scolded?
Yeah, I'm like, hey, you put your mask on. Like,
Oh, so you stood up for your
Yeah.
own safety space.
I mean, it might have been more aggressive than that, but
Does it make you more upset now that you had gotten COVID, thinking back to the folks who maybe weren't doing that?
I mean, now it's done. So I'm like in relief. I'm like, okay, it was just a week. It wasn't like the biggest time period ever where I'm like, oh gosh, I really wish that those kids would have done that, because
Right.
it wasn't, and I didn't even have that bad symptoms because I've gotten my vaccinations, because I've taken so many like safety measures to like protect myself against it. So I'm not completely mad at those people, because I mean, everyone is going to do what they're going to do, and you can't tell everybody off.
So do you think that having been vaccinated and wearing your mask and sanitizing and taking all the different travel precautions, do you feel that actually helped you in not getting it as badly?
Definitely, for
Yeah.
sure. Because, well, when I had it, I was probably more mad than ever, because I'm like, why me? Like, I took all this time to like not get it. I've been doing all these protocols, and I was thinking about how some people don't want to get their vaccinations because they say, I'd rather just get COVID because it's not that bad. And in that moment, I was thinking, well, maybe it isn't that bad. Maybe it wasn't worth it. But then I'm thinking, no, it was worth it, because these symptoms could have been worse if I hadn't gotten those vaccinations, or if I hadn't been wearing my mask in front of people who had COVID. And it could have been a lot worse if I did not take those safety measures.
When you caught it and you knew you had it and you were isolating in your room, were you worried?
Yes, I was worried. I was like, oh my God. I was so scared. I was like, what's going to happen? I didn't even know. I was like, all I knew was you take the rapid test. If you get negative, you're safe. If you get positive, I was even going to ask what happens, because I don't know.
What were you scared of?
Well, mainly I was just scared that like it was gonna be bad, because like it's affecting our whole
bad for
world.
you?
Like, yeah, I was scared that like it was gonna like have really bad symptoms on me, that I was gonna get really sick, and I was gonna be in a lot of like pain and struggling, and I was very nervous, because this whole thing, it's affecting our whole world. If people are dying every day, how did I know that wasn't gonna happen to me?
Were you worried about your family?
I was worried about my family, because I'm like, oh, now they're at risk of getting it. And I even felt bad for my sister, because she couldn't go to school because of me. And I was like, oh, she's probably suffering worse than me, because my symptoms weren't even that bad, and she wasn't allowed to go to school because of me.
So does having had it and going through what you went through, now knowing that you don't have to wear a mask at school, does it change how you feel about wearing a mask now?
No, I mean, it wasn't the worst experience. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd still not prefer to have to be isolated in my room, because it's sad eating all alone on your little tray that your parents bring you. Like, I need to socialize, to the point where you're like talking to stuff in your room and you realize that you really need to like socialize with people.
It is important. Did your friends treat you any differently?
No. I was worried that they would, actually. That was a big worry. When I got it, I was like, oh no, I don't want to tell people, because then people aren't going to want to hang out with me because I had it.
Right.
But I mean, it didn't. Most of them were like really respectful of it, and they actually like asked to FaceTime just to make sure I was okay, and then we talked for like hours to try and calm me down, because I was worried. And it worked, so that was good. I'm very thankful for that.
So yeah, that's very kind that they were FaceTiming you, and it sounds like they didn't change the way that they treat you, and that you're still friends. So you must have some good friends there. Today was your first day back after being away for 2 weeks, and you went back, and now there's no mask mandate. How was that experience today?
So in the beginning, I was like kind of nervous. I'm like, oh gosh, nobody's gonna like wear their mask. And I know kids who are saying they're so excited to get their masks off. They're so excited to not have to follow these protocols. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what is happening? We're like not going to be able to wear our masks. Everyone's going to take them off. I'm going to be more at risk than ever.
Is that what happened?
So not as many people took their mask off as I had expected. And it wasn't as bad, because it, like, for whatever reason, I thought it was going to be a lot worse. I thought more people were going to be a lot like closer, and they were a little closer because we did get like moved, our desks were moved closer to each other, and that was a little like, oh my gosh, people are so close to me. So that was probably the weirdest part of it. But I mean, it wasn't as bad as I feared.
What was the ratio of kids wearing to not wearing?
Like, I don't know, at the beginning of the day it was like 6 to like, I don't know how many other kids are in my class. Like, I don't know. Like
6 not wearing it?
17 maybe. 6 to like, yeah, 6 not wearing them.
So maybe a quarter?
Maybe about a quarter. And then later on, more people started unmasking. Because like, a lot of people came into the classroom with masks on. And then as they like, I guess got more comfortable, they like started removing them more.
So at the beginning of the day, it was a quarter. By the end of the day?
Maybe
half?
like a little less than half.
So pretty close. Do you think that's going to continue? You think more people will start taking it off?
Maybe, probably.
Are you going to take yours off?
No, everyone's saying that they feel like COVID's over, but I'm like, everyone's like, but then the teachers are like, oh, it's far from over. We're not kind of out of the woods yet. Like, just because the government's like lifting these mandates, doesn't mean COVID's over.
How long are you planning on keeping your mask on?
I don't know. I feel more comfortable with it on. I feel safe. I feel like it's like my protection. You know, I feel very uncomfortable taking it off actually. And like, I like even like see my water bottle on my desk and I'm like, oh God, I'm really parched. I really want to like drink some water, but I stop myself. I'm like, no, you can have water when you get home. And like, I know you shouldn't dehydrate yourself, but like, I do that because I'm scared to take it off. Are
you more worried now that you caught COVID than like today? Were you more worried that you already caught it and you don't want to do that now? Like you don't want to?
More worry and less worry. It's like a mix of both. More worry because I don't want to have to be isolated in my room again, go through that whole process again. Less worried because I know that it wasn't the worst it could have been. And I know that if I get it again, it's not going to be the end of the world, at which I thought it was at the time when I got it.
So what will it take for you to be comfortable enough to say, I'm ready to take my mask off?
COVID to be over.
What is COVID over to you?
It's when it's not, I don't know, like when it's spreading less, when it starts to die down, when more people are vaccinated, less people are getting it, maybe even like people wearing their masks more so we can like put an end to it or quicker, you know?
Right.
To make sure that I feel comfortable taking it off.
So if COVID is around like a cold forever and ever, and we know that that's what it is, will you be taking your mask off?
Yes, eventually. I just need people to, I need it to be, I need the variants to be like less spreading, like less contagious. I need it to settle down. I need people to stop. Like I need people to just. Will
what your friends do impact your decision at any point?
No. I don't. Listen, like when the teacher asks you a question and then one kid raises their hand, I don't raise my hand because that kid is my friend. I raise my hand because I know the answer.
Fair enough. I had you on a podcast several episodes ago where you sang a song that you wrote. And in that song, there's a line. And you wrote this song about the pandemic earlier on. And there's a line in that song and it says, it might never be the same again. And you were referencing all the things that we used to do in that before that first year of the pandemic. Do you feel that it might not ever be the same again? Do you think we'll ever get back to that the way it was pre-pandemic?
No, I don't think it will be exactly the same. I think we might get close.
Yeah.
I don't know. Things might be different. Like, I don't know how we'll do buffets. I really like buffets, but I love that you get to pick your own food. The waiters take so long at the restaurants that don't have buffets. I'm like, I gotta hurry this up.
So this is all about food.
No, it's just an example. Like buffets might not be the same. Like, it's just like everything. It's just like, it's not gonna be exactly the same. Like, you can still catch it. So they might, maybe it will. Who knows?
Are you going to write a different song? A more hopeful song?
Nope.
Are you working on other songs right now?
Yes.
What instruments are you working with?
Piano, but like I was trying to record something the other day, but it was very staticky.
Yeah.
Like it was like a lot of static when I was recording it.
You'll have to look at that and what the technical challenges might be. Well, I look forward to hearing what those songs might be, and the audience, of course, hopefully you'll be able to share that with us. Thank you for having this chat with me. We are going to talk to your sister because she kind of went through an experience with you having it, and she's got the way she felt about it. And I think she kind of missed you because, maybe she...
Yeah, I missed her.
Yeah.
I missed her annoying me. That's weird. Like, that's seriously
You missed your sister
weird.
annoying you.
Like, I'm like, why is she not jumping on my bed and making me, like, super annoyed right now? And I'm like, oh, because she can't come in here. I'm like, I need to squish someone. I need to, like, hug her. And I don't even usually hug her often. She's like, Marina, you never hug me before you go to bed. And now you can't hug me.
I think you guys hug all the time.
I mean, no, we don't hug all the time.
All right, Marina, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it, and stay safe.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I've got my other daughter with me now, Angelina, and we're going to talk about the COVID-19 experience in the family. Right, Angelina?
Yes.
Yeah. So your sister caught COVID-19?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did that make you feel?
It kind of made me feel like bad for her because like she has to stay in her room. She can't really do much or like associate with the family or go near them.
She had to isolate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Were you worried about her?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
I was worried for her that like she might not get rid of it like anytime soon. Like we might not have gone back to school today.
Today, because it's been
Mm-hmm.
a week of March break and then the week before, right?
Yeah.
So you guys were home for a couple of weeks.
So I'm kind of happy that she doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah. You said she isolated. Did you miss her during that time?
Yeah, like whenever we wanted to play together, we had to like go on a FaceTime call, and even to call our friends, we always had to go on a FaceTime call, then audio call them as well on Marina's devices. It was hard to do things together.
Were you worried that you were going to catch it?
Mm-hmm.
Was that because she was in the house with you, or were you worried that you were going to catch it at school too?
I was worried I was going to catch it at school and in the house, really.
Now you wore a mask to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else was supposed to be wearing a mask at that time. Did everybody have their mask on usually?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they take it off ever?
Only when it was snack time, but otherwise, no.
Right. Well, that's interesting. And so, were you surprised that she had caught it?
Yeah. I was definitely surprised because we always wear a mask. We never really take it off. So I was really shocked when I heard that she had COVID or was tested positive.
But during that time, there were kids and teachers missing, weren't there, from school?
Yeah, there were a lot.
Did you know that they were away because of COVID?
I didn't exactly know if they had COVID, but a lot of my friends said that they had COVID.
So it was more like a rumor.
Mm-hmm.
The people, you noticed that at one point, was it half your class you said was missing, or almost?
Yeah.
Half your class?
Like at one point, there's only like 15 to 16 kids in the class.
Out of how many?
Out of 22.
Wow. And the teacher too?
The teacher was away for like a week.
But you don't know if she had COVID.
No, she could have been doing something else.
Right. But there was, compared to other times during the school year, there was a lot more people usually away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and your sister, you don't know, I'm not sure if you know, but your sister's class too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think now? Like you went back to school today and there's no mask mandate, which means that not everybody has to wear a mask, but if you choose to wear one, you can wear one. And if you choose not to wear one, you don't have to wear one. How does that make you feel?
For the people who are wearing masks, even in general, it's like easier to get COVID now. Like you can still get COVID with or without a mask on.
Yeah.
But like I just think that like more people can get it now that the masks are off.
Do you think more people can get it with the masks off, whether you have one on or off? Like, is it you think it's easier for everybody to get it, or is it easier for the people without the mask to get it?
It's easier for everybody to get, but at the same time without the masks.
Right. How's everybody treating each other?
Fine.
Is anybody bugging somebody who is wearing or isn't wearing a mask?
No.
Everybody's being respectful?
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Were you worried about that?
Not really.
No?
No, I don't think people will make fun of people for wearing a mask because they just shouldn't. Because at one point they were also wearing a mask, so it should be wrong. It should be wrong that if people would make fun of them if they did wear a mask still.
Now, you're in grade 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you noticing that either older grades or younger grades are behaving differently with their masks now?
Sort of.
In what ways?
Like,
Do you find that they're wearing less of them, like starting today, or more of them, or how does it look to you?
to me, most kids aren't wearing masks,
No matter which grade.
no matter which grade.
So when you say most, is it 50-50? Is it, so it's an even split almost.
Mm-hmm.
Half the kids in the whole school you think aren't wearing them and half of them are wearing them.
Yeah.
Do you want to get to a point where you don't have to wear one?
When COVID's over, yes. But while COVID's happening, I want to keep mine on.
Well, what if COVID's never over?
Then I guess I'll wear a mask for the rest of my life.
Is that something you really want to do? Do you think we'll get to a point where COVID's just with us, like maybe like a cold, and you won't have to wear a mask? Do you think it'll ever be like that?
I don't know.
You're not sure. But you feel that the mask gives you some protection.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you do that gives you some protection?
Staying home.
Well, I don't think you could stay home because you still have to go to school. But you liked the learning from home?
I sort of did, and then sort of didn't.
You missed your friends?
Yeah, and it's much easier like in person and in class than like it is online.
Yeah, I know there's some subjects where it was easier for you and you got to interact with people and learn in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm. So even though like online learning's safer for you, it's not easy to do.
Yeah, you had to deal with different things when you were doing the online learning. All right. Well, thank you for doing this with me. I appreciate that you gave me and people who are going to listen to this, maybe even some kids, some insights of how you felt or how you're feeling. And maybe that'll help them out too.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Angelina. Well, there you go. I wanted to share that experience with you from elementary school kids who have dealt with having caught COVID, having lived with somebody who had COVID in the family, and then also the continuing experience as, the rules continue to change at school and in our society as we come out of this. So continue to do the things that you need to do to make you safe and being respectful of each other. So I wasn't going to tackle this next topic until the subsequent podcast, closer to the Ontario provincial election. But given the recent announcement between the Liberals and the NDP at the federal level in Canada, where a deal was brokered between the two that would keep the minority government in place, in exchange, the New Democrats would have an opportunity to see some of their policies put into place. It isn't quite called a coalition government because there is a definition for a coalition government. It's being termed a confidence and supply agreement between the two. And I don't have all the details of that just yet, but it did start to make me think about an article that I had put together about a possible coalition government in Ontario, because as we know, there is a June election coming up. And what would the coalition government look like, and what would be some of the benefits around that, or some of the things that could make it happen? So I'm going to read that to you because it's just a timing thing where I thought, okay, it's happened at the federal level. Let me start the conversation this episode. Let's see what happens over the next month. But here you go. It's called Would Ontario Benefit from a Coalition Government? Ontarians may find themselves in a similar position to that of a child needing a little bit of something different from each of their parents as they head to a provincial election. This past weekend, our daughter had an idea of what she wanted to achieve. She also knew that the best results would come from the participation of both parents in the activities that she had in mind. For instance, the selection of a graduation dress had mom as the selector and change room assistant, and dad as the secondary advisor, or safety net in case things got too frilly for her. Later, dad would be the skate fitter and Zamboni while mom provided a safety net for, well, safety and got the hot chocolate going. If the current polling holds true, Ontarians might be saying that there is no one single party that can achieve everything they want. Whichever poll you want to cite that gives you a few points for whatever party you support blindly, faithfully, strategically, temporarily, or otherwise, the one constant across all of them is that none of them are carrying a majority, not in percentages, nor in seats. The province seems closer to each party holding a third of support, with a current edge to the incumbent Conservatives. If that is the case, who would support a minority government between the NDP or Liberals? Maybe neither, and maybe, in the best interest of Ontarians, they shouldn't. In January 2022, Abacus Data polled over 1,200 Ontarians on what the top issues facing the province might be. The top 5 included 1. The COVID-19 pandemic, 2. The rising cost of living, 3. The healthcare system, 4. Housing affordability, and 5. Climate change and the environment. What Ontarians might be saying through the polling is that given the current global challenges, there is no single party in Ontario that can or should govern this province. Arguably, the current administration hasn't helped any of those top 5 issues, and if the pattern holds true, as we take a closer look, it is unlikely that they will. The COVID-19 pandemic. As the Premier of Ontario emoted frustration, declaring COVID-19 over in February when he said, "I'm done with it," it appears that Ontario is again heading towards an encouraging pandemic outlook, and not because Premier Ford said so, but because the few statistics the province still collects provide some insights into that pattern. After appearing to lose control over testing and communication, Ontario no longer conducts regular PCR testing or provides stats and communications for schools in what potentially became a save-face rebranding exercise of "we need to learn to live with it," all the while conveniently shifting the labeling to endemic. While that placated a base that was busy protesting mandates, 60% of Ontarians disagreed, making the pandemic the number one issue on their minds. Does Ontario need more lockdowns? No. Ontarians could, however, benefit from a balanced plan that gives citizens the information and tools they need to, at a minimum, help them make better decisions, protecting its most vulnerable, and uses data to help drive the decision-making process, especially during health and economic uncertainty. The rising cost of living. There is no doubt about the negative economic impact the pandemic has had and continues to have on businesses. Ontario has seen the opening and closing of the economy in waves throughout the pandemic that had little warning, questionable timing, and disastrous results. In retrospect, although many lived it in real time, the timing of provincial lockdown announcements were out of sync with what was happening globally. The tug of war between keeping the doors open and stopping the virus spread was on full display as leadership potentially failed both. Interestingly, economic growth, a Conservative platform promise cornerstone, didn't crack the top 5, but the cost of living did. The cost of living has skyrocketed in early 2022, with inflation reaching 5.1%, the highest it has been since 1991. Families now grapple with more expensive groceries, travel, housing, and utilities. The surge in fuel costs alone has been taxing when you consider Ontarians could be facing an annual hit of $6,760 in fuel costs based on a $2 per litre at 65-litre weekly average. Not even the failed 10-cent reduction in fuel costs promised by Premier Ford, which has been deferred to an exclusive fault of the federal government and the carbon tax, can offer enough relief at this point. There are, of course, small incentives rolling out under the current administration, like the removal of license sticker fees with retroactive refunds that can put up to $240 back into the pockets of Ontarians. The equivalent of 2 gas fills, I suppose, but at what long-term cost remains unknown. Online sources project the revenue loss to be around $1 billion, and while some citizens are happy about the refund, it remains unclear where that revenue will be found again. Some political pundits point to future cuts in education or healthcare. The healthcare system. It makes sense that healthcare rounds out the top 3 issues for citizens, and it is intricately linked to the pandemic response and outcomes. During the pandemic, healthcare in Ontario was bent, but not broken, and that is likely because of the doctors and nurses who continue to patch it on the go. That said, nurses have been leaving the profession or moving away as failed efforts to lobby against Bill 124, essentially a wage cap, as well as deteriorating working conditions during the pandemic, have left them frustrated. CBC News also reported on February 16, 2022, that Ontario is facing a surgery backlog that was reaching 1 million cases. In a CTV post from Alison Jones on February 1, 2019, the now lame duck Deputy Premier and Health Minister Christine Elliott indicated that the Ontario government's transformation of the healthcare system will not include 2-tier care, private hospitals, or making patients pay for more services out of pocket. The idea of 2-tier healthcare has been circling the Conservative fold at least as far back as the Ernie Eves era in 2002 and seems to always creep up during fiscal uncertainty, real or manufactured. Ontario did see the sale of medical tests during the pandemic through private means, making them available to those who could afford them, but not to everyone, while citing personal choice as a requirement. There were also indicators back in January 2021 about offloading hospital backlogs to independent health facilities. How that is accessed, how much it costs, and other details remain unclear to date. What is clear is that Ontarians have healthcare as one of the top 3 issues during a time when the economy, cost of living, and affordable housing are all pushing back hard. Housing affordability. In May 2019, Minister Steve Clark published More Homes, More Choice, Ontario's Housing Supply Action Plan, with one of the messages being, Ontario needs more housing, and we need it now. It's time for our government to take action. Almost 2 years later, in November 2021, the provincial government announced the creation of a Housing Affordability Task Force. On February 8, 2022, the Advocacy Centre for Tenants Ontario noted that the majority of the task force recommendations focus on increasing the supply of housing and making it easier and faster for developers to get municipal approvals for development. So, almost 3 years after the minister saying Ontario needs more housing, a task force came out and said, Ontario needs more housing. While the planning of plans continues, according to a report published by WOWA on February 17, 2022, the average cost of homes across Ontario increased by 25.6% in the last year to $998,629. Among affordability, one of the challenges of building more homes is containing urban sprawl and avoiding negative impact on valuable farmlands. As the housing crisis continues, the Premier focused on announcing that he would build a new highway in southern Ontario that the Green Party says would pave over 2,000 acres of farmland, as it ran from Milton through Vaughan, saving what the Liberal Party estimated a total of 30 seconds for commuters. That was one highway idea among others that leaves a lot of questions about timing, cost, and future planning, especially when it comes to environmental considerations. Climate change and the environment. If the pandemic had any positive impact, it was proving how much work can be achieved remotely while having a positive impact on mental health, work-life balance, and the environment. In an article I wrote in December 2021, Return to Office, a Prehistoric Flashback, I referenced an OECD report that cited the environmental pressures that are mostly linked to energy use observed a sharp decline in 2020 of 7 to 8%. That decline was due to the massive global reduction in fossil fuel consumption, and for a brief period, we proved that we could make a positive impact on our environment. Ontario building more highways, putting more cars on the road, and reducing farmlands doesn't seem to fit the environmental or other lessons learned from the pandemic. John P. Lauder wrote in the book, Our Iceberg is Melting, Changing and Succeeding Under Any Conditions, tradition dies a hard death. Culture changes with as much difficulty in penguin colonies as in human colonies. But with this colony, culture did change. Ontario's iceberg is melting and in need of a culture change. Positive disruption. A coalition government is one where two or more political parties cooperate to form a temporary alliance to form the government. In the recent insurrection on Ottawa, Canada's capital, occupiers allegedly wanted to form a coalition with the Conservatives, NDP, and Bloc parties to become the new government of Canada, which technically could have never happened under our democratic system because, among other reasons, the occupiers are not an existing party. The last legal coalition government in Ontario was in 1985, formed by the Liberals and NDP, although with some variation as the latter did not have members appointed to cabinet. Together, they ousted a minority Conservative government after a non-confidence vote. A minority government that either ignores the issues or drives in a direction based primarily on party platform may not be in the best current interest of Ontarians. Besides, if slightly over 1/3 of the province is represented by that party, whatever their platform, does that really represent the will of the people across Ontario? While the number of seats would be more than any one of the other parties, it truly would not represent most Ontarians. Given the current social, economic, health, and environmental challenges in Ontario, a Liberal NDP coalition government might be a viable option that not only represents more Ontarians, but would hold greater accountability to one another while addressing their top 5 concerns. Perhaps it might even repair some of the divisiveness incurred as they collaborate to deliver modern solutions using the knowledge, skills, and technology that makes Ontario not only yours to discover, but truly where good things grow. This is an opinion article by me, Guido Perino, of the Go On with Guido podcast. Well, that is certainly something to think about with the upcoming provincial election and what's going to happen there, especially given what just happened in Canada at the federal level with the NDP and the Liberals announcing that they would work more closely together. Now, as I said in earlier parts of the podcast, there's a lot going on right now. And one of the things that happened over the last few weeks is the skyrocketing price of gas. What I have now in this next segment is my son, Anthony Perino, who is currently a student at Mohawk in journalism. And he was on assignment doing a piece on gas prices. And so he interviewed some folks and how gas prices might have impacted them and what they're doing about it now. So I'm going to play that. He is outdoors, so there is some road noise. So let's turn our attention to that and tune in to Anthony Perino reporting on gas prices.
Canadian gas prices have continued to climb, causing car owners to race to the pumps before gas gets too expensive to justify. I'm reporter Anthony Perino at a local automotive shop asking some fellow Canadians what they think of the situation. All right, so I just want to know how the rising price of Canadian gas has affected you.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been going a lot longer than you have. This is the third time they've raised it. Okay, and it hasn't affected me at all because I'm in that age category where I only drive a couple of days a week. But for the average person going back and forth to work, it's killing them. But you got to expect, thanks to our buddy Trudeau and his carbon tax, the one he keeps adding on, he is donating to the gas prices. And your average citizen, considering the fact last year everybody was out of work, trying to make it back up again today. That's, like I say, I have to be nice. But no, it's not a very good thing for our people.
Yeah, how has the rising price of Canadian gas affected you?
It's affected me really majorly, actually, with the fact that everything now is just going up in price, and it's getting hard to kind of cope with it and balance out like lifetime stuff like housing, rent, mortgage, and so on and so forth. And then you have a dramatic increase in price for people who can't really afford it.
I just want to know what your opinion is on the rise of Canadian gas prices right now, if you're okay with answering that.
It's terrible.
All right.
Especially for us in pension, you know. Too much.
I was just wondering how the rising price of Canadian gas has affected you.
Well, I own my car for a little bit of enjoyment and obviously needing to get around. It's a sports sedan, and I went from about $120, $150 a month up to probably about $400 a month. So it's affected me pretty nice, but like I say, it's a price to pay to have a nicer car, I guess. But it's coming to a point where I might be looking for a more economical car.
So how has the rising price of Canadian gas affected you?
Very negatively. Let's put it this way, from $80 that it used to take to fill up my car to $140 yesterday. So that's a lot of money every week. So yeah, it hurts. It's going to hurt, then it's going to hurt everybody. It's going to hurt the economy. I think it's not only going to hurt the economy, it's going to hurt small businesses, it's going to hurt even big business, deliveries, Ubers, everything. We're all going to feel the pinch.
So how has the rising cost of Canadian gas affected you?
Personally, I drive about 40 minutes every day from work to home, and it's definitely not fun, and it's definitely really expensive. I have a small car with barely a very small gas tank, and I spent about, I think the last time I spent about $95 because I had to take premium. So yeah, it's been pretty bad. It sucks.
So special thank you to reporter Anthony Perino, who gave us those sound files from the video that he was shooting that day. I did get to help him, by the way. I was the cameraman. And there was a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules we had to follow, but it was a horribly miserable weather day. It was raining. We were shooting outside. And so the folks were very kind that afforded him the time to talk to him. But you heard there a very wide range of folks in terms of occupation or age. We had students. We had folks who use cars for leisure. Business owners, general workers, and the consensus was all the same. Everybody's facing that same sort of, we've experienced such a large increase in the cost of a tank of gas, and you see how it's kind of creeping into some of their other expenses, or where they're using their money in other circumstances. One of the options that we did here was, I've got to look at an alternate method, or I got to look at an alternate type of vehicle. And it's interesting because here in Ontario, we currently don't have the electrical vehicle incentive program that got taken away, I think at the onset of our last provincial government. And so we don't know if that's going to get reintroduced, although there's been some programs that have allowed for investment in electric vehicles. So it'll be interesting to see if that program comes back, how we're dealing with gas, or are we going to, reduce our reliance on gasoline for our vehicles? All yet to come, and we feel for you. We're going to try and keep covering it, and I'm going to see if Anthony will help us out in the future. So again, thank you, Anthony, student at Mohawk, for giving us those sound clips on Canadian gas prices and the impact as folks are feeling it. All right, off to our next segment. It is time for the Four Fans Talk Sports. That's with Roland, Brian, Clark, and myself, Guido, your host here at the Go On With Guido podcast. And we do this segment. We've been doing it now for several months. It's called the Four Fans Talk Sports, where we talk about sports, different topics, things that are going on, and we just talk about it from a fan perspective. Of course, we try to add some value and find some information and some facts and make it relevant. But of course, we have our opinions on these different topics. Now, what we've done over the last month or so is we actually have a spin-off podcast, and it's called It's Not the Ref. And we actually meet a little bit more frequently on that one, perhaps 2, 3, 4 times a month, depending on what's going on. So it's a spin-off of the Four Fans Talk Sports, and we're going to have some of that content here for you on this podcast, where the Four Fans Talk Sports. Here we go. So in this first part of the segment, we started talking about Russia and sports in Russia. And this was at the onset of the war in Ukraine. And with Russia being shut out by many leagues and organizations, we asked the questions, was enough being done? Should more players speak up? Have they responded fast enough? Does it make a difference? And we looked at different organizations like the IHF, the IOC, the Olympic Committee, Formula One, FIFA, soccer. And then, we looked at different players, Gretzky, Ovechkin, Panarin, and others. So let's tune in to that segment and what the Four Fans thought about that. All right, welcome to the show. Rolly actually made it. The technician is with us from Windsor. We got the ref up in Barrie, Brian. We got the commissioner in Detroit, and myself. We got me, Guido, the host, the moderator. Although I think I might need to be moderated.
The video judge.
It's not the ref. I would like that job. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to be the video goal judge for the NHL?
Yeah.
I'd have
Absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wouldn't be as bad as the ones that they have now, or as biased. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I hear the Habs have a video replay judge in their targets as their first pick in the draft next year.
You know what? They might trade for the one the Leafs have. So, I hear that goal judge has got a really good record for them. So anyways, you know what? We'll get to that. We're going to talk Leafs and the magic goal last night. But before we do that, we've been sending texts back and forth about what's going on right now, a little bit more serious, right? In Russia and their invasion of Ukraine, but what that means in terms of sports and the different leagues. So I think it all started. We all kind of thought, well, what are they going to do, right? Are the leagues going to start banning Russia from these things? And then who was it first? What was the first team? Was it Poland? I think Poland said, we're not playing them. We're not playing Russia for the World Cup qualifying. Followed by Sweden, followed by Czechoslovakia. And then eventually FIFA comes around and says, yeah, we're going to ban Russia from participating in the World Cup. Why did it take so long?
I don't know. But Formula One kicked in too. They were one of the first ones that basically took a race away from Russia almost right away when it happened.
Yeah, they said the September 25th one in Sochi is canceled. They're not going there.
Yeah, and then hockey came after, and International Ice Hockey Federation saying they're pulling the junior championships out of Russia, and I think Gretzky to his credit made some comments on TNT and said let's not invite him to the juniors, and they came through with that fairly quickly, and it's been a snowball. Once it started, it's been a bit of a
IHF banned Russia and Belarus indefinitely from all competition. And I saw the piece. I don't remember where I saw it, but I know Gretzky kind of came out and said, "Hey, like something should be happening here," sort of thing.
Yeah, he was on TNT. It was during the middle, I think, on the intermission of one of the games.
Did he say anything about the players in the NHL?
I'm not sure if he did. I saw something recently from the NHL though about that, saying they're concerned for the well-being of the Russian NHL players. And you know what? For some of them, I totally agree. I think the guy that's taken a bit of a rap right now is Ovi, because he kind of straddled the fence and cooked his own goose by not condemning what Putin did. So can't have it both ways. He's on record as being a big supporter in that, and now he's trying to backpedal a bit. But
yeah, he might not know how to deal with it. Eh? Maybe there's not people around him to direct him. I think he's having a hard time dealing with that. He has family back there too. And just before we came on, I read that CCM has dropped all the Russian players.
yeah, I just saw that too, Roland.
Yeah, and I guess Ovechkin was making good money with them, like over $500,000 a year, just in advertising and marketing, but $500,000 plus. So that kind of surprises me, but I don't know. I don't know how you can blame the players for what's going on there right now.
And even, Ovechkin is perhaps a different case because of his support of Putin in the past. But and any other players, I think it's really hard to look at it and say, well, they should be speaking out. They've all got families back there. And what is this regime willing to do if you're a Russian player in the United States or Canada speaking out against what they're doing there and your family is back in Russia? It is really easy for us to say, and us is not just the four of us, it's a large group of people over here saying, oh, well, they should be condemning this. It's real easy to say that when we don't have anything on the line, and they do. And they can believe it's wrong all they want, and if they say so, bad things can happen to them or their families.
But, Ovechkin...
It is a bad position for them to be in. And Guido, you were about to say Ovechkin. Yeah, he's been a supporter of Putin before, and he's been that publicly at least. Yeah. We don't know. That may be a paid gig essentially. That may be, hey, you'd better support us, or something's going to happen here. And so he comes out, and it's easy for him to come out and say, yeah, go Putin when things are good. And now he's got to walk it back.
I want to read
it's something. Easier for us to say this than it is say any of this than it is for them to say anything.
I want to read something. Jack Todd from the Montreal Gazette did an article, and it's in the article. It says, "It's simply not true that Ovechkin can't do anything. This is a defining moment in many lives, Ovechkin's included. One day he will be remembered as much for his actions now as for the goals he has scored. Don't underestimate the courage it takes. Putin has people killed. But if it was easy, it would not be courageous. Ukraine needs more from Ovechkin. Putin has made a terrible miscalculation here, a murderous blunder that should end his reign. Ovechkin needs to lend his considerable strength to toppling the tyrant from his pedestal before it's too late."
So those are nice words, and those are nice words, and I want to agree with them. But does Ovechkin speaking out now really topple Putin? Does it really end the invasion? Does it really do anything other than put Ovechkin's family in danger?
Well, let me ask this. Dominik Hasek spoke out. Dominik Hasek said, "Hey, you know what? This is wrong. Putin is a mad killer." Panarin, I think.
Dominik Hasek said that from the Czech Republic, where he's safe, and
Panarin spoke out.
And Panarin's had trouble before.
Yeah,
I get the individual player thing. So let me, I can't give Ovechkin a complete pass on it, because if he was willing to support the guy beforehand, something, his family was there before and all things considered. But where's the NHL in this? Like,
they honestly have done nothing other than say, yeah, you know what? It's bad. We feel for what's going on. Like this is another Gary Bettman.
What can they do?
I'm doing
honestly,
nothing.
If I'm going to put you on the spot. You're Gary Bettman. You're the new Gary Bettman. What do you do? Easy to criticize, but if you don't have it, what are they supposed to do?
You know what? It's the same thing as what I said about the World Cup soccer. Why did it take 3 teams to speak out first? Why isn't the league or the commissioner coming out in front of it and going, you know what? I don't have the answer, but this is wrong, and we're going to be taking a look at it. Don't make these guys do the work for you, because then you are putting Ovechkin in this place.
It's been a week. In some cases, we don't know what all is going to happen.
Should have been immediate.
And
should have been immediate.
And I'm going to say I will not be surprised if Russian and Belarusian teams end up playing in some of the things they've been supposedly kicked out of, because by the time some of these events happen, future tense, there's plenty of time for things to blow over, things to change. Oh, hey, they retreated, so it's okay. Oh, hey, they won. So, well, guess we lost that one. It's been a week. There is a lot that can change by the time some of these events happen, by the time any of these supposed actions actually take effect.
I'm not saying that might not be true, but it shouldn't be true. There's no path when I look at this that any of these leagues should ever walk any of this back. Like, it should be a long time, and a lot of things would have to change with Russia before I ever walk any of this back.
Yeah, and that's what we'll see that. We'll see what transpires. The NHL did come out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, with a statement saying that they've cut off all ties with the Russia Hockey Federation till further notice, and the Belarus Association as well.
Yeah, they
shut down their Russian social media sites.
They suspended relationships with Russian business partners following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They're also discontinuing any consideration of Russia hosting future NHL events.
Yeah. They have a difficult thing to
as well. I'm sorry, even broadcasting games, I think they were broadcasting games back to Russia, and I think they're going to be stopping that. I don't know if that was immediate, but I think they're going to stop that as well.
The biggest challenge for them is with the Russian NHL players. I think that's the biggest challenge they have, because for the most part, most of these players that have been, like a guy, even like Ovechkin, I don't like what he said, but Ovechkin, Kucherov, all these guys, for the most part, have been living in the States last number of years, have become more Americanized or North Americanized than they are Russian. Yeah, they have all families and that, but they're making their living here. That's a tough one, and I'm sure there's got to be some levels of tension in dressing rooms and stuff like that too. That this whole thing's caused. Like, it's causing strife and stress just in general public and around the world. It's got to be doing that in the sports world as well.
Yeah.
I guess, you know what, I look at some of the individual players, the ones that did speak out, and it's easy to say, hey, you know what, great. It's nice to see them speak out. I just feel bad for them. I don't know if feel bad is the right word. I feel bad for them, though, in a way, because I would want my league to do more. I would want my organization to be in front of it, not me to be in front of it. But I don't. The NHL is sometimes like the province of Ontario. They just kind of wait and see what's going on, and then they kind of say, "Oh yeah, us too. Yeah, look, we're gonna say and do this." Whereas, like, Roll, you mentioned Formula One. They didn't wait. They were out there. It's canceled. Meanwhile, there's this driver. He's a former Formula One driver, Daniil Kvyat, and he said that sports should remain outside of politics. And he decried any banning of Russian athletes. He's a former Formula One driver from competition. He says it's unfair. after the invasion. He still thinks it's unfair.
So Guido, what current event does the NHL under Gary Bettman have planned with Russia?
That's what I was going to say too.
It's not the event; it's the message. I think.
No. But easy to say. Formula One was out in front of it right away. That's because they had a race that was planned in Russia, and they said we got to make a call, and so they did it. To compare the NHL,
no, the race isn't until September.
NHL doesn't have any events in Russia
ever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have the NHL events in front of me or what they're planning to do with Russia. But
Gary Bettman for not coming out and taking a stand where he doesn't have any vested interest in Russia. NHL doesn't deal with Russia.
And the NHL isn't going to send Stinger missiles to the Ukraine or anything like that.
No,
there is nothing they can do.
It's just being able to stand in front of it. He's got Russian players in the league. It's being able to get in front of it and taking some accountability, not just for the league, but for those players too. He didn't do that.
I think they did.
I think they were late. I think that they're late, like they're always late.
I think given what their level of investment or vested interest with dealing with Russia is, I don't think so at all. I got to disagree with you on this one.
What do you mean vested interest?
They don't have any dealings. They don't have any events with Russia.
Yeah, but they have a bucket load of
a player transfer agreement with Russia right now, do they?
Well, I was going to say they do have some agreements as far as the players go, but I don't know the details of that. But so you guys don't think that the NHL should have just got in front of it? Gary Bettman shouldn't have got in front of it?
I think he did. I don't think he had. You're slagging him for not being first. I think taking the secondary approach in this was fine. Those leagues those organizations that have frontline dealings with Russia were certainly the ones that had to act fast and act decisively.
Well, I mean, look, I'm giving FIFA just as much flack as I'm giving Gary Bettman, because three teams had to come out and say, yeah, we're not playing Russia before. You got pictures of those guys of rubbing elbows or whatever.
I think FIFA was trying to move the games, outside of Russia and say, we're going to play here.
Yeah, right.
We'll play in Paris. We're gonna make. Although they moved the UEFA Cup away from wherever they play in St. Petersburg or whatever, they moved it to Paris.
Yeah.
But I think they play those other games in a neutral site, and then the teams from Poland and Czech and Norway or Sweden came out and said, we're not playing them at all. So and then FIFA came out and kind of banned them. So it's a tough call, Glee. I mean, with the NHL and Bettman, I'm not sure what he could do or say. He did come out, like Brian said, he did come out and they did put out a statement. What more can they do? I don't know.
I guess. I mean, you look at the IOC. The IOC finally, they've banned Russia from the Paralympics, but I'm not convinced.
Oh, did that happen too?
Yeah. Well, Belarus can still continue to participate. They did withdraw the Olympic order from everyone who had an important function, apparently, in the Russian government. I don't know what else they did, if it's gone any further, but I guess we'll see. But Clark, you said earlier, you're like, yeah, well, when if it blows over or if they win, then maybe this stuff. I'm thinking, oh man, either way, they just shouldn't. Like, they should look at this and go, this can't be a 1-year thing. This has to have some longevity, I guess. But that's just my.
But that's, I guess that's what I'm saying with like the Olympics, with the NHL, with organizations that don't have immediate dealings in Russia. There is time to see how this goes, and that, to a certain extent, sucks. I mean, because this is bad. I mean, capital B bad. Don't I am not trying to say otherwise, but as an organization that can't immediately impact that, the NHL, the IOC, most of the sport groups have the option of sitting back and seeing what happens and then levying a proper punishment response, however you want to put it.
Some fans online are saying, well, you know what? Suspend the Russian players, except for Panarin, because he spoke out. Suspend the Russian players. I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, they didn't.
Classics.
What good does that do?
I don't know. I'm just telling you what I read, right? Like, so, yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know. We're not going to solve it or agree, and we may never agree on all of it.
And sport isn't going to solve it. Vladimir Putin is not going to say, "Oh, well, wow, we got kicked out of the Olympics. Better pull back."
Right. No, it's a shaming. It's a complete shaming, is what it is. That and the fact that he lost.
You have to be shamed for it to be a shaming. He doesn't care.
He lost his black belt in karate or judo or something today too.
He was on the other side. Putin has used sports to his advantage.
He has,
for marketing purposes and to say how strong the country is, and so he's used that as his advantage. So, I talked about it the other night too, Gui, and it's like this isn't. I don't think it's a Russian people's war. This is a Putin war, and has nothing to do with the people. It's I don't know. Somehow it's got to be stopped. I don't know what the answer is, but somehow, they've got to stop him at what he's doing.
Well, you make a good point there, because I think with all of these banishments of Russian teams and that, and so the Russian population is going to go without watching international hockey. They're going to go out without seeing their figure skaters who absolutely dominate the sport for the last few years. They're going to not see them compete against the world. They're going to see their soccer team not compete. Like, it's going to be the Russian people. It would be the same if no comparison with respect to the war and everything that's going on. But it would be like if Canadians weren't able to see us play hockey or whatever. Like, they're going to go without, right? And we talk about it hurting Putin, and I think you're right. I don't think it's not him that's going to be the one that suffers. It's going to be.
But maybe the athletes. Maybe the athletes put pressure. Maybe he doesn't care about the athletes, but I'm going. Maybe all that added pressure. It's not going to change it, but I guess there's hope, right? There's hope that all these different pressures are pressure this guy into doing something different, because we can't explain what he's doing and what's going on.
Outside of sport, the most promising thing, a couple of things that I've, just on this topic that are the most encouraging to see was and you talk about someone with courage and speaking out. The Ukrainian president, the guy sitting there and saying to the United States, "Hey, I don't need a ride. I need help," right? Yeah. Because they offered to get him out and pull him out of the country. There's a guy. You want to talk about the most courageous guy? For me, in 2022, he's the front runner, bar none, as the most courageous human being in the world.
I'm gonna let's stop it there. I think that's a good place to leave it. Is that is a courageous human being, and he is an inspiration, I think, in a lot of ways to a lot of folks.
Boy, some tough conversation there when it came to Russia and Ukraine and the sporting world. And I don't think that conversation's over. It's certainly not over. But you could see as we were going back and forth that's really what's going on out there as people talk about it, and as sports organizations look to figure out what to do next or how to support Russia or what to do with the athletes. This next segment, we're going to get a little bit lighter. There's a lot more content on the It's Not the Ref Sports podcast. So I encourage you to check out the rest of that. But I'll leave you with this. In one of the later episodes that we did, we covered off the new Toronto Maple Leafs reverse jersey in collaboration with Justin Bieber. So let's leave you with that on the Four Fans Talk Sports.
Hello, everybody. And last night, the Leafs introduced this. It's the Leaf reverse jersey, courtesy of collaborating with Justin Bieber. And the first thing that came to my mind was, Boston Bruins. If you can't beat them, you may as well look like them. But I know, Clark, you were quick to point out it's the reverse. They have to, it's the Bieber brand or whatever. What do you guys think? Out or in? You guys like this?
I don't dislike it, but you got to keep in mind, this is for next gen. It's for the kids. That's the whole thing. Their whole game last night was focused around stuff for the younger generation. So the Bieber design is what it is. So
it's not just next gen though, because this is their new third jersey. That means that they're wearing it. I think the rule is 4 to 12 times a season for the next three seasons.
The black and blue one. I don't think you'll see him wearing the yellow one.
Oh yeah, they can't wear the yellow one in game. That's already been said. So they can't wear it in game.
Makes me itchy.
It's a gimmick.
When they opened the Air Canada Center on opening night of the Air Canada Center, the Bruins and the Leafs played. I was at that game. I sat behind the net at one of the ends. And I was like, what am I doing here? I don't like either of these teams. But they opened this new building and I was there. And this just ties it all together. And I was just like, on the inside it's got the Bruins look and on the outside it's still the Leafs stuff. And it's just like the whole thing gives me a rash thinking about it. I don't know, guys.
I've seen almost universal praise from Toronto fans, all that, and everyone else seems to hate it. So I don't know if it's Toronto fans are the ones who are going.
Toronto loves everything. Toronto fans love everything.
Wait, you're taking it all out of context. No. If you're looking at the black and blue jersey, it's actually sharp. If you're looking at
I'm going to disagree with you there.
If you're looking at the yellow and black jersey, that's a Justin Bieber creation. It is what it is.
I can't. Right? I just can't.
I think the thing for me is they don't look like the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, they've had that traditional Leaf for so long. The old one.
All right.
They don't look like the Leafs to me, and you can make an alternate jersey that is different but still has your heritage in it, and this one just doesn't look like that.
Well, we got a live shot.
I could be an old man yelling at a cloud.
We got a live shot of them playing with those jerseys on last night, and they won. But this wouldn't be an episode of It's Not the Ref if we didn't cover at least one It's the Ref type of call.
All right, there you go. We ended that session with a little bit of fun, but you're missing the part where we start talking about another segment where we get into a call with Mark Giordano. He's in the penalty box. It's his first game with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the call gets reversed. They actually pull him out of the penalty box. So if you want to hear that, and we had fun with that too, there's some video involved there. If you want to look at that, you can see it online on YouTube. It's Not the Ref podcast. Or you can also go to guidoprano.com under the podcast section. If you just want to hear to the audio files, they're available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and on Amazon as well. So check it out. It's Not the Ref podcast. You get more content. It's available on multiple platforms. And if you want to see us and see some of the video and the images that we have, then please check us out on YouTube on It's Not the Ref podcast.
Hi, I'm Richard Chase, introducing Chaser's Fresh Juice, a local business in Toronto. We've been in business for over 20 years, initially supporting our local Toronto area and now servicing all of Canada. Chaser provides fresh organic juices, ingredients including citrus zests, dehydrated garnishes, and fresh citrus peels to enhance any cocktail or recipe you can think of. We have successfully supplied restaurants, distilleries, craft breweries, and bakeries across the country. Reach out to orders@chasersjuice.com for any questions you may have. We are a customized fresh juice company, and I'm sure we can help you. Thank you.
All right, we've come to almost the end of the show, and I'm going to leave you, as usual, with a song. And I said to stick around, and we're going to hear from Sarah Tolle, and this is her brand new song released on March 18th. You can hear it on thepathrradio.com. But here it is for you on the Go On With Guido podcast. Like it or not, this is Sarah Tolle.
Like it or not, this is how I look naked. Bottom to top, this body's all mine for shaking. I'm not always overjoyed with it, but I'm still dancing on in my own skin. So like it or not, this is how I look naked. Like it or not, like it or not, this is how I look naked. Bottom to top, this body's all mine for shaking. This is all me from my beautiful noodle, right down to my bucky doodle. Like it or not, this is how I look naked. And if you want it, a beach body. Listen up. Step 1, take your body to the beach. That is all you have to do. Follow me. And if you want to shake your body to the beat, that is all you have to do. Dance with me. Like it or not, this is how I look naked. Bottom to top, this body's all mine for shaking. I'm tickly with wrinkles and my cellulite shows. And if you know biology, that's how life goes. Like it or not, this is how I look. This is how I look. This is what I look like, world. And this is how I sound. In the mirror, listen up. You can't get me down. If you're hiding, you are loved. You can come right out. Like it or not, this is how I. Like it or not, this is how I. Like it or not, this is how I. Like it or not.
That is Sarah Tolle with her new song, Like It or Not. I'll have all the links to Sarah's contact information and where you can find her songs in the podcast notes. Thank you for joining us on the April edition of the Go On With Guido podcast. See you next month. Take care and stay safe, folks.